This is Geek Gab with your host, Dornall, and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back, Geek Gab, for Monday, March 31st, 2025. Hey, it's the 31st of March. Do you know what that means?
Stay off the internet tomorrow.
Yes, it is. It is Stay Off the Internet Day. Although War Thunder, you know War Thunder, don't you?
I don't. Is that like
It's the
Warpig's
biggest.
long lost cousin?
It is the biggest leak site for military secrets on the planet.
I didn't know it existed.
It's a game. It's a game where you play tank commanders, and then they added ships and planes.
Oh yeah, I remember this story. Yeah, where the specs were so accurate that it was effectively military leaks because military people played and right, gotcha.
Well, and then they modeled the interior of all the vehicles in 3D. And so they have one feature of the game where you can go into this like museum and peer inside cutaway drawings of all the vehicles. Well, sometimes they get certain stats on the vehicles wrong. And people on these forums get really heated about it and they get really angry about it. And so people who literally have access to classified information will post photographs from classified documents all over the planet to the War Thunder forums. Americans have done it. Chinese have done it. Can you imagine what kind of hardcore internet poster you have to be living in communist China and have the balls to post pictures from classified documents to an internet forum to win a fight?
Wow. Honestly, that sounds just like gamers.
Um, so yeah, that's your War Thunder. But that's not the news we're talking about today. The news we're talking about today is War Thunder got in early with the whole April Fool's jokes. They posted an announcement today that starting in 24 hours, they were going to be adding an open beta of infantry to the game.
Oh boy.
And of course, everybody posted, they tweeted this out and they've got a whole um, YouTube video trailer, which is actually pretty cool. I watched it. It was like, wow, that makes me excited to play it, even though I know it's April Fool's joke. But yeah, they stacked it up, and everybody in the comments was like, one guy's like, I know this was just an April Fool's joke, but can't you please make this real? So yeah, that was a bad beginning, and other people took it seriously. So April Fool's is apparently broken containment now and spreading through the internet forward and backwards in time.
One of the worst, dumbest things we do ever. What dumbest events ever in human history. And you notice how it's always brands and companies that are doing it right? Haha, look at how clever and hip we are. Isn't that funny? Isn't it funny that we made a joke post on April Fool's Day? Wow.
See, back in the day before corporatization and MBAs really hit the gaming industry, and it was just gamers running the companies. And so gamers are making these posts. And I'm talking like way back in the 2010s. A lot of them really were clever. I remember some Blizzard ones were quite clever about StarCraft. Um, uh, and there were a few fake product announcement ones from some companies that were like software companies that were jumping into hardware with really ridiculous products that would never work. But as time went on, we got into the 2010s, it just, all these MBA types who were, I guess the term now is line goes up types.
Yeah.
Um, People who were so desperate to make this quarter look good that they were willing to destroy all goodwill from the customer base. They just started doing a bunch of stuff that was so obviously fake or insincere or corporatized. Um, Companies do not do well when they're trying to meme. You cannot push a meme through a company committee. It just doesn't work. Or trying to use emojis in company billboards. It's
Oh,
almost
disgusting.
creepy.
It is. It is. And for the line go up types, you can't treat it like a regular work project. It's not even a good advertising project where you can't say, "Oh, we're going to post, X types of engagement, Y times per day, and hope that that drives engagement or revenue Z amount over the next 3 months," right? Like you can't do that. All you can do is like, yeah, I paid some intern to post on Twitter a bunch and try to make jokes, and nobody cares.
Yeah, it was funny when some Wendy's intern decided to mouth off and it got viral, but then they fired him for doing that. And then everybody got angry, but they could never recapture the magic when they tried to rehire someone to do it again. And then everybody
Right.
else started doing it. And the only person who's really done it well is Steakum, which is hilarious because they weren't trying to be Wendy. They were just doing their own little thing in their own little way. Like they had their own corporate personality. They weren't just copying Wendy's snark. They were doing like philosophical things and stuff and asking deep questions and things. They were doing like their own whole different thing. They weren't trying to be hip and, talking to Gen Z or whatever. They were just doing their own thing. And I think that's why their stuff didn't didn't come across as being condescending or stupid. I mean, I don't know if that was just the one guy they hired, if that was a corporate strategy session, or if that was an advertising agency strategy session. I don't know. But however they landed on that, it works. The Steakum stuff is hilarious. But that's the only other one I've seen work after the Wendy's, whoever was running the Wendy's account. They had so much genuine interaction too. Like people were making fan art of it, like copious amounts. Everybody loved it. And then they just cut it off. They fired her. I'm like, you guys are so dumb.
Right. Just like
Was,
It's free exposure, but oh no, the wrong kind of exposure. Who thinks like that?
Oh, dumb people. When you've got people's attention, you just kind of have to let it roll up to a certain point. Unless it legitimately really goes over, some line of like racism or something, then you have to cut it off and apologize for that. But up to that point, up to up to the point where it all goes slash pull, you just have to let it roll. uh,
Absolutely.
okay, do you have any like news? Oh
No, not
yeah,
much going on. Liz, did we talked about Snow White last week, right?
yeah, she was in third place this weekend.
Yeah,
um
worst outing ever. That sort of leads into the main topic of the show too.
she got killed by I think it was a religious movie in second place. Um, and then the brand new, oh, I can't remember his name now. Why can't I remember his name? He's the bald guy. He's in almost bald guy. He was in whatever in Hobbs with The Rock. He was the guy that was Jason Statham. The new
Jason
Jason Statham.
Statham.
Yeah.
There's a new Jason Statham movie. I need to see
He
this.
he was in first place, and um it's based on a book written by Chuck Dixon.
Oh, cool.
And I've been told it's basically sort of Batman without the costume.
Okay.
Um, but he goes around beating people up for vengeance, which I mean, that's what
That's
the Beekeeper was about, and I
that's
loved
why you
it.
watch a Jason Statham film.
Yes, that's Jason Statham in his element doing Jason Statham things. I mean, um,
How was this not on our radar to watch for tonight's show?
I didn't
Incredible.
see I didn't see any like commercials for it anywhere. Nothing. Uh,
Same. Huge failure of
nothing
marketing.
nothing on YouTube or anything, but it came in first place, and it bumped it and another movie bumped Snow White down to third. So, you know, that's a second week down to third is a bad look.
Yeah, well deserved
So,
though.
um, let's see.
Oh, and they fired. They basically not quite fired, but they basically took the actress off of all the promotions. Um, the Rachel Zegler apparently was being so obnoxious on social media with her posts and politicized content. She's I mean she's a 20-year-old woman. Like it's just very like woke leftist content, and and she basically had producers fly across the country and be like, "Hey, uh, there's already nobody watching the movie. Don't piss off half of America or our potential viewers or anything. Like you're being a liability now, and you actually have a responsibility. It's in your contract to help promote the movie." And finally, they just took her off all the no more promotions for her, and they all but fired her.
Disney is blaming her and her alone for the entire failure of the movie, um, which is not quite fair because she didn't cast the movie, she didn't write the movie, she didn't direct the movie. All of those things were done by the producers, the director, the screenwriters, and Disney. They're the ones who set out to make a bad Disney movie. Now, Rachel Zegler did a lot of stupid things. I'm not excusing her for the very real stupid things she actually did. Her comments about Trump, her comments about, we may cut the prince out entirely. That's Hollywood, baby. Her comments about, oh, the old Snow White sucked, and this is a brand new Snow White. Um, where a strong, powerful woman who don't need no man. I mean, this is not exactly what she was saying. This is the gist of it. And the thing was, they didn't stomp on her fast enough because she was accurately describing the movie that they made. This is the movie they scripted. This is the movie they made. And people are saying, oh, Rachel Zegler she ruined Snow White. And I'm like, she didn't actually ruin Snow White. The producers, the director, the screenwriter, and Disney ruined Snow White. He just publicized that Snow White was ruined and added a bunch of her own left-wing garbage. If it hadn't been for her, audiences wouldn't have known that Snow White was ruined and might actually have gone seen the movie. So really, she did everybody in America a favor. We all know long ahead of time that the movie was going to be ruined. And people just stayed away. Because previous crap that Disney ruined made a lot of money. And then upcoming crap that Disney has ruined, which is the live action Moana, is going to stack cash like they were building skyscrapers out of it. Okay? It's going to make a ton of money. But Snow White absolutely destroyed, and she deserved every bit of heat she got for those comments, but she didn't ruin the movie. That was on other people's heads. They cast her, but I'm told she, is actually has talent as an actress, that she can actually sing. I'm told that her singing voice when she was in West Side Story was really good. I'm told she did a good job in West Side Story. That the movie was ruined, West Side Story, was not her fault. It was Steven Spielberg's fault. He ruined that movie, not her. But she made obnoxious comments in connection with that movie too. So, is this going to be something that actually shocks her out of her little cocoon? See, here's the thing. She believes, and I'm not making this up, she believes in psychic powers. She believes in what is called, and there's a lot of women who now believe in this, what is called manifesting. Manifesting is when you keep an image of what you want to happen in your life, and then you send it out into the world, and then the world will deliver that to you. This is absolutely a real thing. I am absolutely making this up. I'm absolutely not making this up. Excuse me.
Got him.
I heard somebody, the other night saying, heard a woman the other night saying, "You stay manifesting, girls." And I had to explain to the person who was watching the TV what that meant. She sincerely believes that she has had this career because she manifested it. Idea in her mind, sends it out into the world, that makes it real. Now, psychic abilities, psychic powers are based around the principle of noesis, noetic abilities. And you can check me on this. You can do a search in Wikipedia or on the web or whatever for noesis or noetic. And I'm going to type this in the chat so people can see it. The principle behind psychic powers is that our thoughts control reality, which is to say, manifestation. She thinks her psychic abilities created her Hollywood career. So she doesn't have a sense of responsibility about her comments. She doesn't have a sense of responsibility about really anything, because all she needs to do to get another job is to manifest it. Now, apparently, she is really talented. That's what people who know this kind of thing tell me. And she's probably going to do well doing stage shows. I think she's actually been chosen for a run of Evita on London's West End, which is where all their Broadway plays, or the equivalent of Broadway plays, are staged. So she's already got a job lined up, not in movies. And she can probably have, a long career making substantial amounts of money going from play to play. But what Disney is doing is they are assassinating her career as a movie star by putting all the blame on her. And behind the scenes, telling everybody how hard she was to work with. Everybody involved in this movie wants to save their jobs. The phrase is, cover your bums, cover your rears. The director wants to say, no, it wasn't my problem. The screenwriters want to say, no, it wasn't our fault. Everybody else in the movie, all the other actors want to say, oh, no, it wasn't us. And the way you do that is you find a scapegoat. And by making all these comments, attacking the audience, telling a bunch of people on her, I don't know if it was her TikTok or her Instagram. I think it was her Instagram. Oh, these are my political opinions, and if you don't like that, unfollow me because I don't need you. Her comments have made her a perfect target. They've made her a great scapegoat. So she has become the reason for every single thing bad with the movie. Which, while she did a lot of boneheaded things, isn't quite fair. Because she didn't do all the boneheaded things. In fact, she didn't even do most of the boneheaded things. She just did the most public boneheaded things. All the boneheaded things she did was in public. And everybody else's boneheaded things was in private until the movie came out. And when the movie came out, they blamed everybody else's boneheaded things on her. So, I'm not going to say, if she had been wiser and not as politically strident, if she had tried to work with the audience and earn audience loyalty, because we were just talking about audience loyalty with companies, right? And their line go up, people are destroying audience loyalty. If Rachel Zegler had worked on charming the audience, had worked on being a outgoing, friendly, smiling, personable, charming person who people could fall in love with as the next America's sweetheart, then Disney wouldn't have dared put her on the chopping block because the audience would have rallied around her and said, but she did so good with the singing, but she did so good with the dancing. And really, it's not her fault that the movie sucks. Get the director. Because if you have a lot of audience loyalty, you can, do that. She had kept her political opinions to herself. If she had focused on making people feel good about the movie, she could have survived this disaster because it would have been clear it was not her fault. This movie was gonna suck no matter what she did. That's the point.
Which is funny, right? Because she is one of the boneheaded mistakes. You know,
Exactly.
she could be an amazing if she's an amazing singer and dancer and actress, so be it. But that whole miscalculation of bringing her in to be Snow White, that is one of the big things.
Yeah. Gal Gadot was a bad choice for Snow White. Um, I mean, you want somebody who's good looking, but not so good looking that they overwhelm whoever your Snow White is. Um, so yeah, it was bad casting for those two roles, and the entire movie was poorly conceived because it was you know made during the era where they were trying to push a bunch of political issues and make a bunch of political points. And it turns out that in between the time they scripted it and shot it and were about to release it, that all blew up. Um, if they'd released this a year ago, it still would have failed, but they could have at least had the excuse that, oh, well, this is what everybody's releasing. But in between, in between then and now, all that stuff has very visibly and publicly dropped out of fashion um, with the public. The backlash against it has gotten fierce and public, and those kinds of movies are not getting anybody anymore. And it seems like that's a large part of the reason that Captain America, Brave New World Order, I don't know what the name they finally settled on was. They changed it so many times. Um, anyways, the Falcon movie. That's what the big problem with it is a lot of the reshoots were attempts to get rid of all of the um, all of the hardcore political stuff like they put in the miniseries of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So they just um, Disney apparently has caught on that its politics are destroying its business, but all these movies they have been working on have been inundated with its unpopular politics, and now they're scrambling to try and get rid of them. And while they are apparently, in many cases, getting rid of the politics, what it's leaving behind is movies that are as beautiful and as natural looking as your classic Frankenstein. And it's just not working. You're looking
Yeah,
at me like,
it's and one of the trends in Disney in particular are these live action remakes, and so you know backlash against the politics notwithstanding, these are the type of movies made by smooth brain line go up types, right?
yeah,
They're they're not coming from a good place. They're not coming from a place that wants to tell a good or a new or an interesting story. They want to try to cash in on an existing property, and it in a medium that's far inferior than. I mean, never mind how silly it was to try to remake um, Mulan or um, Aladdin or anything from that era. Snow White is one of the most beautifully animated movies ever made. And so why are you trying to remake that? That's a high bar.
Yeah.
So even when you strip the unpopular politics, you get garbage that nobody wants. Um Man, speaking of animated features, have are you I know you're not an anime guy, but have you seen the any of the Studio Ghibli movies?
I've not seen a single Studio Ghibli movie. Not
Wow.
that I'm opposed to them or like stridently uninterested. I just haven't been highly motivated to go see them, and I've got so much other stuff on my plate.
So, um, but you're familiar with them, and you're familiar with everybody's familiar with the art style by now. Um,
Oh yeah.
I that was great. I can't help but think that in hindsight, was that a calculated attempt at viral marketing? Was to have for anybody who's lived under a rock for the past couple of weeks. Um, ChatGPT had a new release that was very good at generating new images and altering images, and everybody on the internet took their favorite images and converted them to the Studio Ghibli animation style, and it did a really, really good job at aping that style. And
And,
um, it took over the internet for like 3 straight days.
and it was so popular, it literally broke the servers for OpenAI. They had to throttle all requests to OpenAI to slow people down because they had too many requests coming in. It turned into a stress test for their servers, and they couldn't handle
That's amazing.
it. I
And
thought
the
that was
the
hilarious.
great thing about it is I saw someone made, and I think you shared this actually. Someone made like a super cut of a bunch of images they found people posted, and any famous image or meme or something that you can think of from even like the 20th century on was in this collage of Ghibli images. Um, that in itself was incredible to see. But it looked like a viral marketing campaign because I found out that same week from some um, mutuals on Twitter, the platform formerly known as Twitter, that um, Studio Ghibli re-released Princess Mononoke. Uh, Probably if not the best, the most famous or well-known Studio Ghibli movies uh, on IMAX. They did a 4K um, update and re-released it to IMAX, and so I went to see that on Friday.
Brian texted me about it tonight.
Well, well, don't let me spoilers, DW. You definitely should go see it. Take him up on that offer.
Oh no, he
Go.
texted me to say he took his family to it and it was great and wholesome and I should go see it.
You should go see it. Um, it is. It's a beautiful. It's just like we were talking about with Snow White. Like this is another one of the most beautifully drawn and animated films of all time. It's enjoyable to look at. It's enjoyable to watch. It's got an interesting story. It's got the opening scene is of a young man, like a warrior in his mountain village, and we're introduced to this world where, you know, gods and demons and things, and we're talking about like giant animals um, roam the earth, and they're in constant struggle with humanity, right? That you know civilization versus the wild is a major conflict in the story. And so you're introduced to this young man who is protecting his village, and the what he does, the actions he takes, and what he says about after the initial conflict, when he says something to the effect of I was ready to accept the consequences as soon as I let my arrow fly. um, you're presented with a really, a heroic, strong-hearted figure, and it immediately sucks you into this world with the beautiful visuals and the action, and then you get sucked into this character and his quest to lift the curse that's been put on himself, and that brings him into contact with the great gods and the beasts of the forest, and a group of people who live in a town where they mine and refine iron, and they make muskets and bullets, and they're led by this brave and charismatic woman who she's basically single-handedly keeping this village alive, and they're always in conflict with nature, and there's a third part of the conflict where this town is also in conflict with its neighbors, people who would like to um, take or use or uh, claim or purchase the ironworks. Uh, and it just, man, I really zoomed through the plot, knowing that you haven't seen it, and so instead of doing the full spoilers, I just gave you the summary. Uh, it's amazing. It's a great adventure. It is pretty wholesome, especially with the heroics of our young hero. And the titular character, Princess Mononoke, is she's in the image that we used for the show. You've probably seen that image or an image of her many times. And she's Princess Mononoke means monster princess. She's the wolf princess. She's actually on the side of the wolves, and um, so that conflict plays out with the two of them. Um, learning to fight for the good of the forest and mankind. And um, man, what could I say? It actually comes in at 2.5 hours, so it actually is a little long. Maybe not by today's standards, but um, that's because it takes its time to introduce all the different characters and the themes, and it'll linger on some of the beautiful scenes and things that the animators cooked up for us. Um, it's a real treat for me, and it was great to. I got to take my wife, who had never seen it before. She's not interested in anime at all, um, and she didn't care much about the art style or anything. But she enjoyed herself. It was a treat to sort of introduce it to new people. So if you never had a chance, don't waste a Netflix rental on it or anything like that. Go see it in IMAX. It's absolutely gorgeous. Oh, um, yeah, I was gonna say a lot more DW, but if you haven't seen it, I'm not gonna spoil it too much. Um, but Studio Ghibli's famous if you ever seen their other movies, Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, My Neighbor, Totoro. Um, there's a whole bunch of them, and they all have that distinctive art style that you saw in all those memes last week. Um, and it's beautiful and it's charming. They're great all ages films, right? Some of them are more kids movie like than the others, but um, they're all great all ages films.
What other Ghibli films have you seen?
I have seen Spirited Away and parts of Howl's Moving Castle. I don't think I've seen all of it. There's another one, I believe it was Studio Ghibli, Nausicaa, but I haven't seen that one. I've only started that one.
I have been interested in Howl's Moving Castle, um, and I've been kind of cut on the cusp of either watching the movie or starting the book. I just haven't made it. I haven't jumped either way yet.
Well, it's going to be the same thing, the same idea. Something about the stories that you should know is that they are very Japanese. They're very Mononoke in particular is very Shinto inspired, right? They're with the great beasts and the nature spirits and the forest spirits, right? It's very animistic. It's just if you know even the tiniest bit about you know Japanese or Shinto culture, it sort of makes sense in that regard. And so you're basically getting like a Japanese fairy tale, like a new modern original Japanese fairy tale, and that's what you're going to get with Howl's Moving Castle. Same thing. Um,
Even though it's based on a fantasy novel, a steampunk-ish fantasy novel by a Western author.
yeah, I think maybe you're going to find that more in the artwork than the themes. I think that'd be fair to say.
Hmm.
Um, oof. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to rewatch it myself. Um, Perhaps I'm mixing uh, two of the movies together. The other one I remember a little better is Spirited Away, and that was definitely that feels like more of a kid's movie. You know, a young girl is spirited away. Um, Grave of the Fireflies is Ghibli. I don't remember that one. Let's yeah, I don't know that one. I'll have to check that out. I've definitely not I haven't seen them all. I'm not a huge Ghibli fan in the sense that I don't see them all, I don't know them all by heart, but those what I have seen I really enjoyed.
Um, okay, so definite thumbs up on those two. I mean, a definite thumbs up on Princess Mononoke.
Yeah, go see it while it's in go see it while it's in IMAX. It's so cool. Um, Grave of the Fireflies is PTSD the movie. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to watch that now. I'll have to take your word for it.
I
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was wrapping up my my review. It's one other sort of trivia of note. That when it was first released, it was in the late '90s, and so you're gonna hear in the English dubbing, you're gonna hear a lot of familiar voices. You're gonna be like, wait, is that? Yep, it is. The Wolf Goddess is voiced by Gillian Anderson from the X Files. Um, so that was kind of neat.
Okay. Um, I'm going to talk about this for a bit. Um, the secret project I'm working on. Um, I'm up to 38,246 notes.
Oh dear.
No, that's fine. It's really big. It's really, 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 really big. So you gotta picture. Let's say you took AD&D and every single monster was its own note. Right? How many monsters are in the DMG?
Couple hundred.
Right. And then every single rule system is a folder, and every single rule and all of the different variations of it are their own notes and different ideas on them, or how they link to other stuff, or what if you did it this way? Those are all different notes. And discussions about archetypes. I mean, here, let's roll this into a discussion that other people can understand. So you can see how just a game as well put together as AD&D, if you started breaking it down, if you started cutting up the PHB and the DMG and the monster manual into individual notes, how you would have hundreds, or maybe 1,000, 1,500, maybe 2,000, just with the text in there. And then if you took all of the previous 10 years worth of stuff of the previous iterations that finally led up to each of them, how many versions were there of Big B's crushing hand? The original version of the Ranger that was published had cleric and magic user spells. And then some of the notes are just, okay, here's my thoughts on this right now. Here's why I'm doing this. Here's why I'm not doing that. And then I'm involved in these discussions online about a bunch of other different things, and sometimes they illuminate stuff. And so it's like, okay, so and so said something about this. Let's put that in there. Or I was just finding this information about self bows or flails, or how chainmail works versus your rigid mails like plate or things like that. And you take little notes about all those things, and those just go under plate. So plate itself will have 3 or 4 notes just for plate mail or just for plate armor. So when you're trying to take some things back to their roots and understand what they are and where they came from, and then try to see how to express it in a clear way. First, you gain a lot of perspective on where Gary Gygax simplified things and why he simplified things, and saying, well, I might not want to simplify it that way. On the other hand, I can absolutely see why he did. And you have to make a decision about, do you want to spend complexity that way? Because you only have a certain amount of complexity. The more complexity you ladle out onto a game, the smaller and smaller your audience gets. So you want to spend complexity where it's needed. You want to pare it away, and where it's needed depends on what kind of game you're making. I mean, if you're making a modern game set in the modern world that's heavy into, say, special ops or SWAT, you're going to want to spend a lot of complexity on guns. Or Shadowrun spent a lot of complexity on guns, on gun, barrels, on attachments, on sights, on adding integral silencers, on adding different things. So you could just build out a completely tricked out, modified gun that was exactly what you wanted. Whereas other games don't spend all that much complexity on it. So those options aren't available for players because the game is so complex in other areas, you know. And I'm thinking here, I don't know if I say this, Torg, for example. It's not that they don't want you to have choices. It's that in Torg, your choices aren't, okay, do I want an underbarrel grenade launcher? Do I want, you know, this particular laser sight? Do I want this particular patch to hook to my smart gun link? In Torg, it's okay, do I want to play a magician? Do I want to play a magician from Tharkle? Do I want to play a magician from Isle? Do I want to play a magician from Core Earth? Do I want to play a magician from the Nile Empire? The complexity in there is choosing between different character types, and there's like 20 different character types for each reality. So you have to choose based on what type of game you have where to spend your complexity. And so making different decisions, you can see where Gygax chose to simplify things, sometimes critical things that just make it absolutely not work like history does, or like actual physical bows do not work at all like they do in D&D or AD&D. They just don't. Short bows, long bows, there's no such thing. Absolutely do not work that way. But you don't want there to be a set of gradually lengthening pieces of wood that constitute a bow from all the way short to all the way long, corresponding to the strength score of the person who can use it, because that's the pull weight, that's the draw weight of that specific bow. So every time you find a bow, you have to roll on the random table to determine what strength score it was made for. And anybody whose strength score is lower can't use the bow at all. And anybody whose strength score is higher can use it, but they don't get their full strength bonus to damage. Particularly because for AD&D, you don't start getting bonuses of damage until really high attributes anyway. And so people with it's going to be useless doing that for the vast majority of people, because they're just going to be, well, that doesn't matter to me. I don't have any bonus to my damage. So what do I care? Why am I being forced to record this on my character sheet? And I think that's a weakness of AD&D design, is not having bonuses be closer to the median, of just having bonuses be stuck up in the the verge of like 16, 17, or even maybe 15. I think it's a mistake on AD&D's part. I think that's where Beck made D&D and later third edition do it better.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
adds a little more gaming to it. It's a little more gameable, where there's clear trade-offs. And I know you're
I'm not
talking a lot more about simulation, but
I'm not saying that you needed to tamp everything down just to the same pluses and minuses. I'm not saying you needed to erase all the distinctions out of AD&D. Like Ben Barr's lift gate percentages and whatever. I'm just saying that those should have been a little further down the table too. So I was going to talk about archetypes. One of the things you want to do, and I don't know how many people who are listening to this podcast are going to be doing this. One of the things you want to do when you're looking at building your own role-playing game, if you decide to go with classes, you're going to want to look at what kinds of characters are prevalent in your world. And I highly suggest you design backwards from building the world, understanding the culture, understanding the society, understanding the world situation, build backwards from that to archetypal roles in your world. And once you have archetypal roles in your world, building backwards from that to make classes. Pick which archetypes should be classes. Pick which archetypes should be maybe subclasses if you want, or maybe specializations of classes. However you want to do it. And then based on that, decide, what number of classes you want in your game. Because as much as possible, and this is just my preference as a designer, as much as possible, you want the mechanics of the game to work hand in glove with the game world itself, so that the mechanics of the game have a one-for-one correspondence with the events that happen in the game world. Even if that correspondence is, say, okay, you're driving this car for a minute's worth of time because that's how long the round is. So make a steering total to see how well you do, and then you have sleet, and then you have black ice on the road, and so those will affect your driving total. So you don't have to make a total for every single bump you go over. It's just for that whole round. Same for physical combat. You don't have to make a total for every single blow, an attack total for every single blow, but you do want rolling an attack to represent the realities of combat. You want the players to feel like the things that their characters are doing inside the game world are related to the modifiers and their chances to succeed that the game mechanics affect. If they're shooting a bow in 100-mile-an-hour winds with zero visibility, you just have to put on modifiers, and the game should have modifiers set up that reflect what that, how difficult that would be like. Even if it's just telling the game master, tell them they can't do that. They're shooting a bow. It's going to grab that arrow and throw it a mile in the opposite direction. That's always a viable option. Um, anyways, once you start putting a world together, you can understand sort of archetypes will just tend to sort of organically emerge. I mean, let's say you want to take sort of a Western, like Cowboys and Indians Western. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that. I'm so sorry. I'm
Yes, you are.
so sorry. Cowboy and First Nations Western, but you want to do it with a fantasy flair, right? So immediately, you can start to identify some archetypes because they're archetypes from both the medieval fantasy or both medieval society and Westerns. Okay, in the Westerns, we have the archetype of a frontiersman, scout, explorer like Jim Bridger or Daniel Boone or whatever. So those guys have something like those guys definitely have to be in there. Other westerns are like other Western archetypes are like gunslingers, and you don't want guns in this. You've decided. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to arbitrarily make that choice for you because this is you want sort of a medieval fantasy feel. So you don't want guns. You've decided you want that Western feel, but not with guns. Crossbows are the closest thing you're going to get to guns, and they take a long time to reload, so that's okay. But gunslingers, you can work with kind of that. You think you'll come back to that later. Maybe you don't want that archetype at all. Maybe you want to work that archetype into something else. You're not sure, but that's definitely an archetype in the West. Marshals, U.S. Marshals, who are wandering, sort of policemen on the frontier outside of settled civilized society, and they they came around and they helped towns by running out criminals and by enforcing the law, but they weren't necessarily always available. Sometimes they were the policemen for a lot of different towns, so they'd move on from town to town. But that archetype is definitely there, a wandering U.S. Marshal. And then there's, let's say cattle rustlers or just bad guys. And maybe that's not an archetype you think to yourself. Maybe that's just bandits, and you could put that under men, bandits in the monster manual. So those are three archetypes, two of which can clearly fit already within the fantasy setting, and one of which is kind of sort of maybe. So you write down notes about those. And it doesn't matter that these aren't settled or that there's quote unquote not enough for players to grab onto, because that's just your first thoughts. That's just right off the top of your head. And you just write those down and then continue working on your world. You figure out, okay, so this is a Western. There has to be settled lands where people are civilized. There's lots of cities. It's built up. It's, protected. They have fancy clothes. They have finished goods. They have lumber mills. They have forges. They have iron mines. They have, all the comforts of whatever quote unquote home was. Then there's the original lands they came from. So they came and settled here. And then beyond them, there's the frontier. That's where people have gone out into the trackless wilderness and carved a life out of the frontier. out of nothing and just build their lives and try to live out there and are subject to attacks from monsters, from demi-humans, and from brutal, uncivilized humans, or maybe elves, or maybe cannibal halflings. You're like, yeah, I liked Dark Sun. Maybe I'll use cannibal halflings who can sneak in and attack people, or maybe not. You write that idea down. Maybe you use that, maybe you not. It's just an idea right now. You write that down, take a note. And so then you go to the fantasy side and you start thinking, okay, I want this to be, medieval fantasy. What are some things that come up with that? Okay, well, there's knights, there's wizards, there's witches, there's nobles, and there's thieves, there's and those are 5 ones right off. You start writing those down. Oh yeah, there's mercenaries, and then you start going through, and you've got those down. Those are just preliminary notes, a bunch of 5 things. And maybe you want to use stuff like AD&D if you want to make your game like AD&D, or like 3rd edition or 5th edition or whatever, and maybe you don't. And then you just keep on going through and developing your campaign world. Then as your campaign world comes into more and more in focus, the archetypes will come more and more in focus. And the clue to archetypes is you need to make them universal. You need to make them local enough that they fit in with your world, but universal enough that everybody can grasp them right off the bat. If people don't understand the archetype right off, it's no good. That's not an archetype. But at the same time, if it's so universal it doesn't fit into your world at all, then that's also no good, because then they're not really playing in your world. So you've got to decide, okay, based on this archetype, how can I make this archetype fit into my world? And then alter it, add to it, focus it, whatever you need to do to keep it within its archetype limits, but make it work within your world. And that takes a bunch of work too. That takes thinking over it again and again. There are lots of videos out there on YouTube where people talk about some of the classic archetypes that went into D&D, and I presume other games. Maybe you look at games that have lots of different archetypes, weird or normal ones, just to see if any jog some inspiration or maybe remind you of something you overlooked. You might open up again, you're like, oh, priests. Do I want priests? Are there priests? Are there gods? You realize that's not one of the first 5 you thought of. You're like, oh, okay, I'll put those down. And how do I want priests to work anyway? How do I want magic to work? And you just start going through all these things. And you have to do all these things. Sometimes you jump ahead on some things and you're like, okay, I've got this archetype. I see how it fits in with the world, and I've got kind of the essentials of the class picked out. But everything else is just really basic because you just got inspired and that's the right answer for that. But everything else is just back at the whole, okay, this is the campaign world and this is maybe an archetype, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with it as a class. That's okay. Progress isn't going to be completely even and completely equal, and you really can't you really can't formalize the process of creation and making things. And again, this is assuming you want a class-based game. Um, I would argue that one of the weaknesses of skill-based games is that they don't have innate archetypes. And you'll notice that many skill-based games, even if they don't start with them, immediately run to templates or archetypes. Shadowrun skill-based game had a bunch of templates in the core rulebook. GURPS, totally skill-based game, had a bunch of archetypes in all the game books, or at least got them quickly, or at least had them pervasively throughout third edition. And in later books in third edition, they even had pre-made characters, so you could just pull them out and go. Call of Cthulhu, 5th edition, had a bunch of archetypes for different types of investigators. So a lot of games that are ostensibly skill-based that are too good for dirty, filthy classes, nevertheless introduce templates because they needed archetypes. They needed these templates or archetypes, and they literally call them archetypes. They needed templates to show the Torg. Very skill-based. Thoroughly ran through with templates. Bunch of them in the World Book, and every single Cosm source book that came out after that added a bunch more. Bunch more published in the Infiniverse magazine. You need archetypes to give players a quick grasp on what your world is like, which is why the archetypes you design for the classes, or if you're going with skills, templates / archetypes you have, should emerge organically from the game world that you build. All right, I'm done.
Good talk. Yeah, I don't really want to. I can't say anything to that matches up to that brilliant essay, but I see where you got to 40,000 notes, and there's a lot of stuff to learn from the history of these games, all games, but also role-playing games, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. I think we're also done for the week, DW.
Yes, very much so.
So it was great talking with you. I hope everybody goes sees Princess Mononoke. I want to see this Jason Statham movie. Let's see it for next week if we can.
Okay.
Do we have any other news for upcoming shows that we need to know about?
I have absolutely nothing.
Okay, well we're gonna try to see some good old fashioned action stuff for the near future. And stay off the internet tomorrow, guys. Go see the movie instead of interacting with anything on April Fool's Day. And that's all I've got. Why don't you take us away?
All right, folks, this has been Geek Gab for Monday, March 31st, 2024. You've been listening to Geek Gab on YouTube.com. That's Geek Gab on YouTube.com/GeekGab. We're also available on the Google Play Store, the iTunes Store, and on SoundCloud.com. Just do a search for Geek Gab, and you can find us on any one of those places. Oh, there was something I forgot to say. Dang it. No, I forgot it. So I'm not going to say it. We are we appreciate everyone who listened live. We appreciate everyone who will listen later. And we are signing out for today. So don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.